Welcome to the Image Profile Report. I'm your host, Herb Glenn. Today, we're actively continuing our effort to provide awareness and excuse me, let's get myself together. To provide opportunity and interest in activities that are going on in our community that we advocate for. Today, we have our panel that's constructing itself. We're waiting for other members to get on board. We have Mr. Gregory Glenn from out of the area of finance and development. And we have Mr. Jose Ortiz, who's with the legal services in Newark, the legal, legal, what do you do there,
Essex
Joe?
New Legal Services. I'm the deputy director.
The deputy director of the
We're
Essex
gonna
Legal
we're
Services.
gonna chalk it as it's Tuesday, so
Huh?
it's
Hey,
Tuesday
listen,
today.
man, it's been really a whirlwind. There's so many things that have been going on, especially with me. I've been burning the midnight oil, so I hope you guys understand that that's probably the reason why I'm not on my toes as well as I have been.
All
But
right.
I appreciate you both coming on board and getting involved. We have Shavat that's now getting ready to get actively on our line, and I'm sure many of the other advocates will be involved with what we're trying to do. For today's engagement, there are a number of different exciting things going on. Today is election day. Hey, Mr. Jeffries, it's good to see you
All right.
today.
Good to see you,
Um,
brother.
and there are the opportunities that we want to do to magnify what's so important about the election process. I want to start off with the conversation that I'm very disappointed. I waited on purpose to vote today on election day because I was told that on election day I can be able to take my ballot and I could drop it in a mailbox. And I know that I saw one of these mailboxes in front of the Hall of Records, which it does not exist now on election day. And I don't know where it went. There is supposed to be a number that we're supposed to call. I'm going to try later on that I was able to get from Reverend Roundtree during our prayer for Newark engagement. Every Tuesday we do a prayer for Newark, and I'm a member of the West Ward unit. And I was really upset because I traveled a long distance to try to make sure that I was able to put that ballot in the mailbox. Now, I'm not sure what other remedies there have been made, but certainly there is going to be a major problem in relationship to how people are going to be voting this year. Any of you had the same kind of similar problem? Jose, did you vote today?
Yeah, we didn't have any problems. We had that mailbox system that you were talking about. We had it in our county building. I live in Bergen County, so there wasn't many issues. I didn't see any issues, but I definitely did not see as many people voting.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can see a real neglect in that regard. Uh, Rick Robinson is online with us now. Rick, thanks for joining us. And I hope that that frozen screen doesn't mean that your network went down momentarily. But Greg, did you go vote today? Or have you voted? Did you mail in your vote?
Or I'm going to vote. Yes, I'm going to vote. I have not been mailed in my ballot yet. I have been in the office taking phone calls, but I will be going today. So I'll explain. I'll see next meeting how the voting was for me.
Oh, okay. Well, we did get them early. How come you didn't mail it in?
Well, let's go back with the notion that most millennials don't mail. Let's go back with that,
Which
which
is
go
a
back to the
pretty
conversation
interesting
of
conversation.
why we
Uh,
don't have electronic voting already. Like,
Online
realize,
voting, you mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, not saying that voting is not important. I do,
Okay. All right.
but I don't know. I can't even tell you when the last time I've seen a mailbox. I mean, just tell you, look, I am always the young buck on the webinar. The last time that I see the mailbox, I have no idea. Everything comes email, electronically, or whatnot. So where is the transition into, I say, the 21st century, where you have where you have the electronic voting? Like, even for me to change my address, you have to mail the change in.
Hmm.
Why is it not, you can do that with anything else, but voting?
Well,
I
I
feel
agree.
that needs to be changed, in my opinion.
But your opinion is great, but there is an activity, there's action, and this
You're right.
group is about action. We want to make sure that you are engaged in what needs to be done, and you do have till 8 o'clock. I think it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock tonight to put
Yeah,
it in. Uh, Listen, we're still gathering, and I didn't really want to do the introduction, but I'm going to do it, Shavat, because I really want to get you engaged in our conversation. Shavat Jeffries is online with us today. If there are any of you who do not know the resume behind this brilliant young man, you need to do what I tell everyone about me. Google me. And if you Google Shabbat Jeffries, you'll find out a large assortment of different engagements and activities that he's been able to use his ability and many of his talents and skills and his God-given mission to live a justified life, especially for our people. We're very proud of what he has done and what he's continuing to do, certainly as he advocates for freedom of education, to the freedom of being able to justify wrong criminal acts and things of that nature. But Shiva, very happy to have you online. There are a number of people, I'm sure, such as Young Buck, who don't really know about you that much. Why don't you talk a little bit about you and what it is that you have been really trying to manifest in your career?
Well, first of all, thanks, Herb. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for those kind words. And just appreciate you, and appreciate your body of work and your legacy for such a long time, fighting for our people, fighting for our community in so many different settings. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Yeah, and I'm a kid from Newark, so I grew up on Harding Terrace, which is right off of Bergen Street, right between Lehigh and Lyons. And grew up like a lot of kids in Newark. My mom was 18 and was amazing, but I lost her, at a young age. And my grandmother raised me, who was also amazing, one of the most brilliant people I ever met. And she just worked hard to make sure I had an educational opportunity to kind of, fulfill my potential. And very long story short, I'd be the first in my family to go to college. I would then go to law school. And after law school, I came back home because I wanted to make sure other kids had opportunities like I had. And it was clear to me, my family didn't work their ass off for me to have some opportunities, for me to just do well and not look back. And that would just be dishonoring them. And so for the last 20 years now, um, I've been a civil rights attorney. So I've been involved a lot in educational opportunity and educational equity. I've litigated school funding cases like the Abbott cases, for example. I was part of the team that litigated some of the lawsuits about bringing local control back to Newark. I was involved in lawsuits to sue the state to build more schools in Newark. I've also been in the kind of nonprofit educational equity space. I was the founding board chair of now KIPP New Jersey. We started in 2001 with 3 teachers and 80 students. We're now the largest public charter school network in the state of New Jersey, send more Black students to college than any other public school system in the state. Very proud of that. Also was proud to run for and serve 3 years on the Newark Public School Board, including a term as the president. Very proud of the work we did there to extend learning time. We paid our teachers more, gave them bonuses, did back pay, opened some new school models within the district, brought in some different innovative programs. And Newark is now #2 in the country in what's called, #1 in the country, what's called Beat the Odds schools, which is where we have students who outperform state averages. So very proud of that work. But outside of education, I've been involved in racial profiling litigation. We part of our firm sued the state of New Jersey for racially profiling Black and brown motorists on the turnpike years ago. I've been involved in a lot of violence against women litigation, discrimination against Black and brown people in economic opportunity and employment. I served some time in the Attorney General's office where we had oversight for the Civil Rights Division, Juvenile Justice Commission. I ran for mayor in Newark, which was a very interesting experience several years ago. In the last 5 years, I've been a partner at Lowenstein Sandler, and also run a national organization that supports Black and brown folks who want to run for office and make change through elected office. And so that's kind of the work I've been at. It's all connected to racial justice in a variety of different spaces. And frankly, a lot of it is rooted to disrupt status quos that really haven't worked well for our community. And so, you'll usually find me mixing things up because, the way things have been haven't really worked for us. So you'll oftentimes find me pushing hard and frankly not apologizing for it. Because, my grandmother taught me that being nice in the face of gross injustice actually simply perpetuates it. So that's kind of where I come from, brother.
It's on time, and as we continue to increase our network, John Smith has just joined us. John, thank you very much for being a part of what we're doing. That's great to see that you have taken advantage of the opportunities that have been brought before you, and you have been able to do an outstanding level of advocacy work and making people aware of where we should be positioning ourselves as African Americans. And I know that you and I have talked extensively on the education front, and I'm very proud to hear about what Kip has done. I see that you've also built a few of your own buildings now, which was one of the arguments that was made about the charter industry. If they are so really involved in wanting to develop better opportunities for our children, how come they're not building their own schools? You're building your own schools. Not only that, you're almost eliminated the lottery system, so that you can be able to take in as many students as parents feel that they can be able to take advantage of the opportunity in that area. I am very interested in hearing about your position in regard to what the challenges have been in the office of the Attorney General. You yourself are positioned as a former Assistant Attorney General, and right now we have an issue which I want to get Mr. Robinson involved in the conversation on, whereas the Attorney General seems not to be supporting what we believe more of an interest in what it is that's challenging us with criminal justice. And I've heard you respond on a number of different things. Let's hear your point of view on that.
Yeah, my view is for the listeners who don't know, New Jersey has the worst mass incarceration disparity, black to white, in the country. Some people think it's in the deep South. Some think it's in other parts of the country. It's right here in New Jersey. So for every one white person who's in prison in the state of New Jersey, we have 12 African-American adults. For every one child, we have, year and a half ago was 30. I saw some more recent data. It's in the mid-20s now. But it's a dramatic disparity. It's the biggest in the country. It's comparable with Latinos. We're one of the worst in terms of the Latino white incarceration gap as well. And it's really rooted in the fact that nonviolent drug offenses, if you're a person of color, you're treated very differently. One, and we know this at every step of the criminal punishment process. So who the cops intercede with and question and engage, who the cops then decide to arrest, who the prosecutor then decides to charge. If the prosecutor charges, what do they charge for? If they charge for, and they tend to charge Black and Latinos for more severe sentences, what type of plea bargains are cut? And that's connected to who can access quality counsel. What sentences are meted out if you're convicted? Every step of the way, right? Black and brown people get a much worse deal. And so what a number of us have said is, if that is the case, and it's been that case that way for a long period of time, this Attorney General and the governor, right, they have tools that they can use right now to address it. For example, what I just described, and the facts demonstrate that it's true, that Black and brown folks face this disproportionate and discriminatory criminal punishment. That's a constitutional problem. That violates the Equal Protection Clause of the state constitution. The Attorney General could freeze those prosecutions and force county prosecutors to explain what's the reason for the disparity. And if there isn't a credible basis to explain it, then those prosecutions need to be stopped. The Attorney General could also, through the Brimage guidelines, which basically provide the charging framework for prosecutors, say the very same grace, if you will, an alternative disposition that is afforded to white people must be afforded to Black and brown people as well. The Attorney General also could do to say for nonviolent drug offenses where by and large white folks simply aren't being charged, he could issue a categorical order. We're sending everybody to alternate disposition. So the same a combination that white folks get, black and brown people can do as well. He can do that tomorrow. It's similar to what happened with the Dreamers, for example, right? So people may remember President Obama wanted to get immigration reform through Congress. He couldn't get it done. So he has tremendous discretion over the prosecutorial function. All the Dreamers executive order is the president saying, we're not going to prosecute and deport you if you're a baby that meets certain conditions. You've been here for a certain amount of time. The attorney general and the governor could do the same thing and say, we don't think it's wise and smart to prosecute people in these same categories when their skin color seems to be a primary reason they're being prosecuted. So we can issue a categorical executive order and provide these alternate resolution practices to black and brown people, right? And so what I'm saying is we have to push for that, because instead, we hear about, well, we're going to have the prosecutors go through bias training. Or we're going to, I heard in one conversation I had with the attorney general not too long ago, he said, well, we're going to send assistant prosecutors to the prisons so they can get a better feel for what it looks like to be in prison. So then maybe they won't be as quick to enter into plea deals where there's significant sentences, particularly for people of color. That is crumbs. That is on the edges. That's not going to address this big fundamental transfer problem we have. What we need to do is we need to have categorical rules where for nonviolent drug offenses, we're either not going to charge or we're going to divert people to treatment, which again is what white people get. And for any other offense where there's significant disparities, you can freeze those prosecutions tomorrow. The attorney general has that power because that's a constitutional problem when you have race-based prosecution. And then the last piece, and then I'll be quiet, we see in states that are not progressive, right? Even in Oklahoma not too long ago, they issued mass pardons to disproportionately black and brown people who had been locked up for nonviolent drug offenses. We need to see the same thing here. The governor and the attorney general have all of these tools right now to address these mass incarceration issues. And what I'm pushing for is that we demand more than the crumbs we're getting, because crumbs just isn't going to meet the nature of the problem that we face.
Wow.
Excuse me, Herb. Before, sorry I'm late, host.
Well, then let me do this. This is the Image Profile Report, and I'm your host, Herb Glenn. We have a number of our panelists that are here today that we're now ready to encompass upon an engaging dialogue and conversation in regard to many of the trending activities that are going on in our community. We have today as our special guest on the panel, Mr. Shavat Jeffries. Mr. Shavat Jeffries has been actively involved in a number of different situations in our community and has advocated for better quality and relationship to how we are reflectively being treated as African Americans. I'd like to open up the panel discussion. John Smith, continue.
Yeah, since today is election day, primary election day in the state of New Jersey, and you can't win anything in this state without getting a majority of the black vote. Nothing. You can't win nothing in this state of New Jersey without getting the majority of the black vote. Where is the Black Legislative Caucus, municipal council members, local officials in reference to putting those persons in place to make those decisions in the criminal justice system that affect the lives of black and brown people in the state of New Jersey?
Senator Rice has been aggressive. I mean, Senator Rice has been on it, which is positive, and we got to continue to support him. But again, what I'm pushing on is we got to demand more from a governor who received 94% of the black vote. So if we have the worst black-white incarceration gap in the United States right here in New Jersey, and the governor appoints there's no other governor in the country that appoints all of the county prosecutors and all of the judges. In most states, the prosecutors and the judges are elected. The governor appoints all of them. And on top of that, everything we just talked about before, that the attorney general has supervisory authority over all of the county prosecutors, and tomorrow could freeze prosecutions of nonviolent drug offenses. Tomorrow could freeze any prosecutions where there's a significant racial disparity in terms of who's being prosecuted. Those things can happen tomorrow. He doesn't need the legislature for that. Now, granted, the legislative remedy would be better because it's sustainable. Whatever the governor does only lasts during his term. But while he's there, and if the black folk put him in, we want to see these changes now. Instead, what you hear is, like I said, we're going to send the county prosecutors to the prison so they can go on a field trip and see what prison looks like. Or we're going to send some of these county prosecutors to buy a truck. I think it's comical. It's the same on the wealth gap. We have the worst wealth gap in the United States, right? Both for Latinos and black folk. It's 60 to 1, black to white. You have
Okay,
less than a fraction of 1% of Black folk who receive investment from, from 100 from the pension fund, right? And so on and on and on. My point is, we get crumbs. We seem to settle for crumbs, and that's part of the reason we continue to have these gross disparities.
well, but you know, in the state of New Jersey, especially Black folks seems to follow the lead of their elected officials. When are we going to stop electing, putting those people in office who does not stand up, you know, for the Black community? You know, we continuously put those persons back in office again and again and again, and we still have the same results. We need some change in the state, in our mindset in the state of New Jersey, in reference to who we put into elective office. Because, you know, as you said, the governor appoints, but the governor is elected. The senators are elected. The assembly members, the council members, and the freeholders are elected people that make decisions. When are we going to start putting some persons into office to make decisions that benefit us?
Last thing I'll say, and then be quiet so we can open this up. But just on that, I think it is so critical that for Black folk and any allies, you know, Latinos and allies who are white who support a racial justice agenda. The way I look at it, I don't see any political mechanism in the state of New Jersey to support a Black agenda. I see many great organizations that do tremendous C3 non-electoral work, but I don't see, as a person who's run for office, I see we have Larry Ham who's running for office now. I know others have run for office. I don't see a mechanism that organizes the political assets we have as a community. So whether that's our influencers, the people whose voices are listened to, faith-based influencers, fundraising resources in our community, and then connect that to an agenda. So if we didn't have an agenda and say, this is our agenda, and if you support it, we can bring to bear our political resources. If you don't, we won't. So as a consequence, to me, the political machine we have, most people who want to make a difference have to try to fit within that machine. And we have great people who are working very hard to move that machine as much as possible. Thank God they're doing that. But that machine's only going to go so far, right? We have very few competitive races, right? I just put in my ballot. There are multiple races where there's only one person on the ballot, right? And we're not going to generate people who are going to run against these big machines if we don't create a machine ourselves rooted in the interests of our community, right? As a person who's a father and who's a husband and who has to work 50, 60 hours a week to keep the lights on and put food on the table, then if you want to then run for office to make a difference, and you got to put together hundreds of volunteers, you got to raise all this money, and you got to be out in the community, if there's not a mechanism to support that, it's just not going to be sustainable. And so my response to that, John, is we as a community got to decide that we got to create an infrastructure to support political change. Otherwise, brother, I don't see how we get to where you talked about, John, which is how do we get more people to be responsive to us? If we don't have a machine that they have to be responsive to, they're going to be responsive to the prevailing powers. And in my judgment, our interests just aren't sufficiently reflected in those systems. So I'm not then surprised that we're getting, you know, some of the outcomes that we're getting.
Fighting fire with fire. And that's a very good point, because a lot of the control does come down in relationship to organization. Power is nothing without control. And we have recognized that on many fronts. And even though, you know, we challenge the different powers that be, we still are sufficiently a minority simply because of the fact that we haven't really built that kind of infrastructure. Larry Ham is on the line with us. And Larry, I know you're out in the field really making sure that people are aware of the fact that you're standing on the front line, and there is no way that I could say anything less about you. Very happy that you're on the line. We were with you last
out
week.
trying to get people to the polls.
Hey, man.
I'm out.
I see your I voted shirt, and we don't already got ragged that I didn't. So.
I don't have
So-
any lofty goals today. My goal today is very simple. Get your ballot in the mail or get your butt down to the Hall of Records, one or the other.
Listen, I don't know if you got a chance to hear Shavat's presentation. He opened up and really discussed something that we've been hearing over and over again. But one particular point, and I really want to spread this around, but I want to get you, because I know you're out there doing your thing, and I want to hear you talk a little bit. Shavat spoke about categorical rules. Categorical rules in relationship to the power of the Attorney General. Can you share with me your understanding of how that can be effective?
I missed, to be honest, I came in at about 1:17, so I missed that part of Shavar's presentation, but the part I did hear, I thought was very enlightened. Um, and it is an issue that we need to address. And to go directly to what the part of what Shavar said that I heard, maybe John, and you're a representative NAACP. Is Rick on here too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rick's
Rick
on.
Robinson?
Yeah.
He's not on today?
Yeah,
No, Rick is on.
Rick is on.
Yeah, Rick's
Yeah,
on.
Rick is on. Okay. Maybe we need to have some type of summit, you know, after the November election. I don't think there's a whole lot we can do before we defeat Trump. To me, defeating Trump is the #1 political task before us, because nothing else we want to do we'll be able to do as long as this right-wing cabal is in control of the government, of the federal government. So maybe sometime in early in 2021, we could have a leadership summit. Now, in the past, what Shavar was talking about seemed to have been served by the Black Issues Convention. And the Black Issues Convention was really a forefront, or I should say a frontline coalition. For years, the Black Issue Convention served as a kind of vehicle where all the disparate groups and interests in the Black community could come together to discuss our state, our situation. After the death of Donald Tucker, not suddenly, but gradually, the Black Issues Convention did not have the same vitality that it had when Donald Tucker was at the peak of his strength, because, you know, he was challenged with failing health the last few years of his life. The Black Issues Convention has a annual convention, and the NAACP has an annual convention. But perhaps there still is a need for some type of summit. But the other thing Shavar was addressing, I think there's a prerequisite to it, to have that kind of that type of leadership facility. It requires a certain degree of unity in the Black community, and I'm not sure that we have the degree of unity that we need in this period. And Shavar pointed out some of those very startling statistics about the disparity in incarceration and the disparity in wealth, and on and on and on. The New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, you know, has been putting out some things too to highlight these disparities, and the fact that New Jersey has some of the worst disparities of the 50 states. But it requires a degree of unity, and perhaps, you know, we'll inch in that direction around the task of defeating Donald Trump. But these problems that Shavar was talking about, to me, I don't think these problems can be solved unless we have some deep systemic and institutional changes, because that's what they're rooted in. They're rooted in an economic system that produces inequality, and they're rooted in institutional racism, which compounds the economic inequality with racial inequality. This is why these problems continue to get worse with each generation and don't get better. I'm 66 years old. You know, I'll be 67 in December. You know, Black people in some degrees are in worse shape today than we were in 68. You know, now there's some problems that are not as bad as they were in 68, but there are some problems that are worse. Like, for instance, the rate of incarceration, believe it or not, is worse today than it was in 1968. The level of poverty among Black people worse today than it was in 1968. The disparity between white and black wealth, believe it or not, with the ascension of black millionaires, you know, from the entertainment industry and other places, despite that, the overall conditions of the masses of black people are in many respects worse today. And until we as a community are ready to address that, you know, we're just going to tinker around the edges. You know, we're going to tinker around the edges instead of going. I'm just going to put it out there, and people can disagree. We even scared to talk about capitalism. It's the capitalist economic system that's at the root of this inequality, and this inequality is not just growing among black people. Class inequality is growing among white people. The greatest gap in wealth in the history of humanity exists right now in the United States because of the kind of economic system we have. And Dr. King spoke to it, but we stepped back. Our leadership got scared, essentially, to address it the way King was trying to address it. King was talking about capitalism, and that's why they killed him. And so a whole lot of people stepped back, you know, and we have all this tinkering around the edges when the house is on fire.
Wow.
You know, and
Yeah.
just wait till this wave of evictions sets in after this $600 a week unemployment insurance runs out at the end of the month, and we're going to see just how serious the situation is.
Well, Rick and I took advantage of spending some time with you and got involved with the March on Trenton. What were your outcomes?
Well, the outcomes were essentially that we presented our basic fundamental demands to the institutions that were there, to the state attorney general's office and to the state Supreme Court. And you marched with us, I think, down to the Supreme Court. And we're waiting to see what the Supreme Court, if in fact they heard us. We want a police review board in Newark with subpoena power and investigatory power. They're deliberating on it now, and any day now, there should be some type of decision coming from the state Supreme Court. And we also presented some demands to the state attorney general, and we're waiting for him to respond.
Listen, I know that you're definitely out in the field, and I don't want you to get hurt or injured, but thank you for participating, and please stay on as long as you possibly can. But we want to make sure everybody understands that Mr. Ham is one of the individuals that's out on the ballot, and if you have not voted, you can still look on the ballot and be able to understand that you have to focus on the center and be able to make a decision that's really good. I want to get back to my first question. And Jose, you were online when Shavar first spoke. And I want to get some feedback because we're looking for solutions. Shavar spoke of categorical rules. What is your opinion on that?
My opinion on that is that we have to be at the table. We need to, you know, convey the suffering that's happening in brown and black communities. And, you know, for a state like New Jersey, I don't see too many black or brown faces in leadership positions. We do have the Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver, but until recently, we didn't have somebody nominated to the Supreme Court. You know, I hear from people that I work with and people that I know that one problem that they have in Essex in particular is in the criminal justice system is that you have prosecutors who are coming from the suburbs working in the courthouse, and you know there is no fairness in sentencing, no fairness in plea bargainings, you know. And it's very hard for those few minority prosecutors to really speak up and say, look, this is wrong. And I agree with what everybody else says. You know, it's time that we need to come together and make our voices heard. You know, I've been practicing law for 25 years. I wouldn't be an attorney today if it wasn't for those individuals who worked hard and fought hard so that there'd be more minorities attorneys and in other professions, okay? And we need to do that today across the board. We need to make sure that we're at every table and that our voices are being heard. Educationally, criminal justice, civil justice, because I turned 56 in a month. And like I heard today, we're talking about the same things that individuals talk about 56 years ago.
How do we get to the next level? Rick Robinson.
I think Shavar and Jose hit the nail on the head. You know, when these arguments that we're making pretty much sum up the situation regarding economic growth. It really stagnates us, and Jose just mentioned it. We're making the same argument 60 years ago with a high population of Black and brown people, and it's really disturbing because I voted for this particular governor, and I had a lot of faith in his administration. There was the appointment of different minorities pertaining to different departments, and I was under the impression that a real change was going to occur. But I have not seen change that is effective and meaningful.
Wow.
It is very troubling. You have change,
Mm.
but is that change effective and meaningful regarding situations that are important? So they made a great point, and there are barriers. Those barriers are purposeful, so we have to continue in terms of trying to break down those barriers, because you will never have any growth. You may have a little bit, like we just got somebody actually named to the Supreme Court. I think Shavar should have been on the Supreme Court. You know, these situations pretty much are given to us because of the circumstances regarding the global unrest and uncertainty.
Wow.
So,
Can I ask Shavar a question?
Sure, go on.
Shavar, why do you
Yes,
leave
sir.
the Attorney General's office?
Well, I was there in the Corzine administration. And so when Governor Corzine lost to Governor Christie, let's just say neither Christie nor myself had an interest in the next administration. And so I was the counsel AG, which meant on the civil side. So I wasn't on the criminal side, but on the civil side. So the civil rights work, the consumer fraud work, juvenile justice work, I had oversight of that. You know, and we did things like something called the JGAI, where we dramatically reduced young people in prison. We did, you know, community-based interventions and that sort of thing. And what people get to remember on this is, again, the governor has the authority tomorrow to say we will not prosecute anybody for nonviolent drug offenses in the state of New Jersey. The bulk of the prosecutions deal with those. The bulk of the disproportionate prosecution of Black and brown people deal with that, right? Because this, just so people know how things happen. So the cops target us, right? So they target us to surveil us, right? I went to college at Duke University. If anybody wanted to find some illicit drug use, just come to one of the frat parties on any Thursday or Friday. There's a whole bunch of white people drinking, smoking. My grandma told me don't touch that because she's like, you can't do what these white people do. They'll kick your Black behind out. So the point is they surveil us disproportionately. Most of these are 80% of the law enforcement resources are used for misdemeanors. So most of these are very mundane infractions. We see Black folk being killed after speeding, the tail light out, right? Because they're targeting us for all this crap. If the state said we're not going to prosecute that, right? Then the cops would then would respond, or even the people arrested, they're going to be released immediately because there's no prosecutors moving on that. And if secondly, the state said any offense for which there is a racial disparity in terms of who's being prosecuted, we're going to freeze until the county explains to us a non-discriminatory reason. That would begin to have a dramatic effect. But so we don't get any of that. So what we get is the usual. We're going to have a forum. We're going to have a conference, and we're going to talk about these issues. Maybe we'll send some people to bias training. Same on the wealth front. We have a $100 billion pension plan. At least $20 billion is actually going to black money management. If you just look at who's available and who's qualified, we get less than $1 billion, a few $100 million, right? Pastor Jefferson had a great piece on this in the Ledger, over the weekend about these issues. So my point is, at some point, we got to move from conversation to actual action, and then to the point about mobilizing our political assets as a community. At some point, there has to be a consequence. Like, if people can keep giving us crumbs, and all they got to do is get 12 to 15 black people positions in the government, and that's enough, that's what we're going to get. At some point, there has to be, if you're not doing enough for our community, we got to come get you up out of there and put people in office who are going to fight for our agenda, right? But without a mechanism to do that, and without one that's going to last to stand the test of time, because the other thing, we know people will just outweight us, right? A few people may win an election, but if there's not a mechanism that's going to last over time, then it's going to be hard to sustain any change.
Jesse Jackson called for a summit a few years ago in relationship to what's going on with where is the money. And a number of bankers, black bankers, Sheila Oliver was there. I was there on behalf of Mayor Wayne Smith. And we discussed, the topic that we're talking about today, economic empowerment, what's happening with the pension funds. And as you just alluded to the fact that Reverend Dr. David Jefferson has been on the front line. And one of the major problems has been is that he been reaching out to the governor. The governor is empowered, has the most power here in the state. The governor is not even responding back to him. Now he's becoming vocal, and he's sharing with us exactly what the problems are of his concerns and why there need to be attention brought to it. Greg, do you think economic empowerment and dealing with where the money actually is being invested is important when it comes to black and brown communities?
I personally, I fully agree, and I was reading the article, and he actually made a good quote, and I'm going to read it from the actual article that David Jefferson wrote. The knees on the necks on TV draws out feelings and emotions because of all of us, at least black people, can put ourselves under the knees, he said. What is not as visible and graphic is the injustice when it comes to finance and economics, the structure that is really holding our communities back. And I really do feel that economic empowerment is very key. Just as civil rights is important, we have to really couple with that, with the economic empowerment in order to really transform the community, because power is very key. And if you don't have that economic support and that economic power, then change is going to be very difficult. So I do believe that it's important to know where the money is going, so that way it can empower our community, because if not, then how are we going to be able to get out from the ditch that we're at? I have a question for the panel, and this is in regards to leadership, because one of the things I'm very big on is leadership development. And my question is, we're seeing that we're having individuals from the suburbs coming into the urban communities to make these legal, decisions. Is it the fact that we are not raising up, or there are no individuals that are qualified to fulfill positions in order to make change, or is it that we're not having people getting into the political arena or having that awareness to be able to invoke change? Like, which one do you feel? Is it that we're being stopped from actually being in these positions, or we're just not qualified, or just don't have the people in it?
Larry, let me hear from you. What do you think?
Well, I'm glad that Shavar cited Dr. Jefferson's editorial that was in the Star Ledger. I believe it was in Sunday's Star Ledger.
Yeah.
I plan to issue a statement after today. I'm not going to do anything today but try and get people to bring in or mail in their ballots. But this week, I'm going to try and issue a statement in support of what Dr. Jefferson is calling for, that there should be some of those pension funds should be placed with black brokers. So perhaps some of that might be invested in ways that could help the black community. But I want to say this, and I want to be clear, because I don't want to be misunderstood, because there's some nuance in what I'm saying, and I don't want to be misunderstood. I support what Dr. Jefferson is calling for. I support minority business set-aside programs. However, these programs historically have not benefited the very people that we're talking about today. Shavar was mentioning the disparity in mass incarceration and incarceration here in the state of New Jersey. 70% of New Jersey's state prison population is Black and Hispanic. It might be more than that, actually. I've been in the prisons, and I don't see nothing but Black people. I went to visit some people one time. I think I saw one white person in the old prison. I think he was a security guard, and I'm not making this up. But the point I'm trying to make is that the benefits of minority set-aside program, the benefits of giving a portion of the pension fund to Black brokers is not going to help these brothers in the prisons. We need another type of approach to help poor people, working people, and even the middle class. We need a direct approach. Like, for instance, we need a national jobs program in this country. We need to do what Roosevelt did in '33 and create a 21st century version of the Works Progress Administration to put people to work at jobs at a living wage. I ain't even talking about $15 an hour. A living wage in Essex County is like $33 to $35 an hour. That's what a UPS driver makes. And that's a living wage. That should be the floor right there. We need a national jobs program to put people to work so that they can increase their income. Because that's at the bottom of what's happening here. And giving money to Black brokers is not going to increase the income of Black workers. It's just not. That's why people were talking about with this COVID crisis that a one-time $1,200 payment ain't going to help nothing. You need $2,000 a month so you can pay the rent and pay bills and not get evicted. I'm telling you, this thing going to roll up on us in a minute because people had a moratorium on paying their rent, a moratorium on paying their mortgage. It wasn't a forgiveness. It wasn't a cancellation. So in September or August, when this moratorium is over, the landlord's going to roll up and say, well, you owe me 3-4 months rent. How you going to pay it? You know, and a whole lot of people are getting ready to get evicted here. And Essex County already has one of the highest rates of eviction in one of the highest states with the highest rates of eviction in the United States. We have to have direct government intervention in the economy with programs that are going to directly aid working class and middle class families and the poor.
Wow.
And if we don't do that, we're just going to be here. Our kids are going to be on some future talk show having the same discussion we're having right now.
I need a takeaway. Shavar, I'm going to come back to you again. I really want to understand categorical rules. I need you to break that down for me so that I can move on. Because I'm not moving on until I get that. Really, I think that's something that we can get.
Herbert is like, we done talked about all this stuff, but
Okay.
I need an answer. Please put that in order before we keep going. I got you. I'm the interpreter for my father. I got you.
So
I think categorical rules. So we've been talking about wealth and mass incarceration. I think Larry's exactly right. That has to be both and. I mean, a categorical rule in the pension fund allocation world could be at least 20%. And most studies will show, about 20% of available money managers are Black, should go to Black businesses. And then what we have to do is go to them and say, we're not doing that just so you can make money. We're doing that because we believe you're going to be more likely to invest in our own businesses, in our own community, so that those businesses can put more Black and brown folk and poor people to work, right? So that it multiplies. And And not only that, are you going to invest in those businesses? Who should you hire for your accountants and for your professional services, your vendors, all of that? Larry's exactly right. All of that by itself, no way in the world is going to meet the economic challenges we have. And I think he's exactly right that we also need categorical policies around government investment in communities, job creation programs, infrastructure programs where people can go to work while at the same time providing the infrastructure we need to grow our economy. So I think we need a variety of different things, a comprehensive strategy in the wealth creation process. Now, mass incarceration, it's even more clear. The racism that plays itself out in the mass incarceration context, in my judgment, is largely a byproduct of the tremendous discretion that every actor along the way has. And every actor comes out of, obviously, a white supremacist context in this country, so that they use their discretion in a way that hurts us and that privileges white people. From the cop to the prosecutor to the judge at sentencing, there is amazing discretion, right? The cop has a book, has a set of criminal rules that are size of large books. And he or she can pull out almost anyone at any point in time they want and go mess with somebody. We see this all the time in the traffic context, right? There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of traffic laws out there. And so they can decide, this one is speeding, I'm gonna let them go. I'm gonna go get the other. This one's tail light is out, I'm gonna let that one go, I'm gonna go get the other. With whoever the cops then intervene and decide, and then they have tremendous discretion. Even if they stop you, they can let you go. I better not see you out here again. If I see you out here again, I'm gonna deal with you a different type of way. Or they can arrest you. Even once they arrest you, then that file goes to an assistant prosecutor. They then have tremendous discretion. They can call you into their office. Hey, young man, if I see you out here on the corner again, you're going to see me in a different type of way. Or they can just say, I'm going to go get the mandatory. I'm going to go try to lock them in a box for 3 years. What I'm saying is this, the record is ridiculously clear that, and not even get to the judge at sentencing. The judge has tremendous discretion at sentencing as well. So from the cop to the prosecutor judge, all this discretion which gets used to hurt us, privileged white people. We need a categorical rule for Herb. So to answer your question, the categorical rule would be, we go to the governor we elected. He lost the white vote. We put him in there. We go to him, we elect and say tomorrow, we want a categorical rule. You will not charge you the same discretion that white people get for nonviolent drug offenses. We're not charged. We want that tomorrow for black and brown people. If that happened, no black and brown person in the state could be charged tomorrow. That's tens and tens and tens of thousands of people. We would say furthermore, any offense, so beyond just nonviolent drug offenses, there's other property offenses and others where there's dramatic racial disparity. Any other offense where there's a significant racial disparity, those prosecutions need to be stopped and frozen tomorrow while the AG investigates to confirm, is it racial bias that is motivating that prosecution? If it is, that is illegal under the New Jersey State Constitution. Furthermore, we say retrospectively, there are thousands and thousands of black and brown, tens of thousands of black and brown folk in prison on nonviolent drug offenses who shouldn't be there right now. And if they were white, they wouldn't. Red states like Oklahoma, no progressive beacon, they've issued mass pardons to people in these situations. Those three things, which would be categorical rules, can happen tomorrow, because everything else continues to rely upon the discretion of often implicitly biased, if not explicitly biased, white folk in this system, right? So sending people to training and the field trip to the prison, which is what the AG said on a recent call some of us had with him, is ridiculous. And it's a disrespect and dishonor to us, right? And so these are the type of categorical rules we can push for tomorrow. And if we're going to give you 94% of the vote, that's what we should get. If you're Christie and you got with the white vote, we should demand that too, but we might have to live with bias training and that type of crap for that. But somebody we put in office, we got to demand dramatically more, and through these categorical rules, we could get that.
There's certainly not enough time. You have too many issues that we need to discuss, especially on the criminal justice side. I invite you to come back next week if you have time. If you don't, as soon as you get back, the better. Let's get to what's on the agenda. Rick Robinson, can you talk to me a little bit about what your agenda is about this week?
Basically, what I agree with everybody on the panel, and I'm glad Shavar was on the call because he brings a different perspective pertaining to state governmental efforts and policy. All right, we have been saying these things for the longest, and now we have somebody who can actually expound on why when, how, etc., etc. So welcome to the panel, Shamar. Next week we got the Public Defender's Office, we got the ACLU for New Jersey, and we got the NAACP for New Jersey that's going to draft a letter to the governor regarding the release of promised inmates in the jails pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic. There's over 3,000 people who were on the list to be released. I personally know of a person who was in school on a program for the New Jersey Department of Corrections, taking a bus every day, does well in his classes, so he's already on the street. He has till November to be released. They did not release the man. I spoke with Joe Kokora from the Public Defender's Office. There is a gentleman in the prisons who needs a double transplant for his lungs. They did not release this guy. I cannot believe that he was not released. And we're dealing with, it's a state of emergency. So Executive Order 103 has still been in existence ever since early March. So we'll draft a letter. It's going to go to the governor's office. It's also going to go to New Jersey Advanced Media. So when it comes about, the panel will know, and Herb, I'll bring it to your attention for a press release.
My man, Jose Ortiz. You're muted, Mo.
Sorry, I hear so much today about rules, and I just remember the golden rule. As the gold is the one that rules. And I think that, you know, we have to start investing in Black and brown businesses. We got to start investing in our communities. We got to start, you know, creating our own agenda and make sure that we accumulate that gold. Because at least the gold that we accumulate is done by hard work, not on free labor.
Larry Ham, what's on the agenda?
Get people to the polls.
I'm going. I'm leaving right after this call. I'm going. I want my sticker too. I want my sticker.
I just want to say thank you though to Rick Robinson and Deborah Deborah Smith Gregory and the NAACP for joining us down in Trenton for the March on Trenton. I want to thank you, Herb, for covering it. Also, I want to thank the Retail Workers Union, Brother Charles Hall, who we all know. He brought his people down there. But I especially want to thank Rick, you know, because Rick is very supportive, and he rarely gets recognized, or I shouldn't say rarely, but inadequately, not enough recognition for the work that he does. But he was down there with us in Trenton, and so was Deborah, and I wanted to thank y'all for that. But yes, today is a banner day, and again, everybody fill out your ballots. I wouldn't even say mail it at this point. I think you should just take it downtown or take it to the Hall of Records, whatever county you're in, deliver your ballot by hand. If you do go to the post office, make sure that they stamp it so that it'll have a postmark with today's date on it so that it'll be counted.
All right, good news. Mr. Smith?
I'm going to defer my 3 minutes to Jose in reference to there was a lot of talk today about, you know, the moratorium on renting and mortgages. What is your office seeing, Jose, in reference to that moratorium when it's lifted? What are we looking at?
Well, let me just make it clear that even though there is a moratorium, I get many clients calling our office saying that the landlord has cut off the lights, the landlord has cut off water, and in some cases, the landlord has illegally evicted them. So there are many people who are homeless today, even though there's a moratorium, in the state of New Jersey. In the beginning, we even had the police assist landlords in illegally evicting tenants. Thankfully, that's not the case now. I haven't heard too many of those calls. But, you know, there's a surge coming in September. You know, there's a new rental assistance program that you can, you know, apply to DCA during this week, but it's not enough money to meet the demand. So unless we start doing something, and there's a bill right now in the legislature for relief for tenants that, you know, hasn't even been, you know, called for a vote by the assembly. Now, I take that to be maybe there's not the votes to pass it. And I'm like, how can that be? How can that be? We're already entering the 5th month of the state of emergency, and there's no relief for tenants and homeowners. And, you know, that to me is a disgrace for this state, and is a disgrace for this country. And we just cannot, you know, if we just have to do something, or we're gonna have many individuals living in the streets. I have family calling me saying, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. What I see is the street waiting for me at the end of the tunnel.
Wow. Mr. Glenn.
Wow. Jeez.
I'm so glad that we had time to really talk about the economic empowerment in the in our community. And I actually went on the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, and just the wealth gap between blacks and, you know, whites is just astronomical. And that's one of the things I'm very empowered on. One of the things that I'm also realizing, and I've been having a lot of individuals that I've been working with in regards to having, and I know one of the topics we were talking about was on mortgages and housing and planning for Medicaid, because we're having a lot of people that have to spend down a lot of their assets because of lack of planning, and as a result, they're losing the wealth that they built over years. So really planning for things like Medicaid and long-term care, and making sure that we keep the wealth within our communities and not being it being, I say, almost given away because of a lack of planning. So I always go with my phrase, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So if we're not knowledge and educated on things that are going to financially affect us, we're going to continue in the same economic turmoil that we are now. So economic empowerment, no real event, but I really want to dive into seeing if we can develop some more solutions to create economic empowerment within the African American community.
Wow. Mr. Jeffries, the last word.
Well, yeah, first of all, just thanks for the opportunity. Been great to be with everyone here. I mean, just such amazing leaders and advocates in our community. You know, and I would just say, I think, yeah, I mean, obviously we have external things we have to push that we talk a lot about. I think there's been great points too around, you know, we can also make sure we're investing in one another. We're investing in Black and brown businesses. We're putting our money in Black and brown banks and other financial institutions. We're supporting one another. We figure out a way to get the unity that Larry talked about, so that we can do our politics together, right? Because if we're divided, that's never going to get us where we need to be. Figuring out a way where we can have kind of within the family, and I mean the family of Black and brown and allies committed to racial justice, have substantive conversations about these very serious issues, right? I think differences of opinion around these challenging issues is very healthy, but then we have some mechanism to say, okay, this is how we're going to compromise, and once we've all agreed this is what we're doing, we all going to go do it. Right. So, I bet most of us will take 50, 60, 70% of a racially transformation agenda that we'll all work together on, then fighting one another to get to 90 or 100% of our own personal perspective. So if we can figure out a way to organize and unite around common interests, I believe we can really turn this stuff around. And of course, if we can't, then we won't. So
Wow.
I appreciate the opportunity.
We're looking forward to having you around a lot more often.
My pleasure.
Listen, I just wanted to share with everyone our advancement in moving forward with supporting the effort to get more COVID testing in Black and brown communities, especially in South Jersey area, is coming into existence. We're going to be having conversations with people in the township of Neptune and Asbury Park. We're going to be looking forward to talking a little bit about how we're going to roll out that objective. If there's any other organization that feel that they can be able to use an opportunity opportunity to get their people tested. We have created a excuse me, a MOU with a healthcare provider that is going to be supportive in our effort to give free testing to people in our community that we know have definitely been not given the kind of attention that needs to be given. So we're going to be looking forward to that in the next go around. Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. You know, I'm always happy to see my firstborn on, giving some really good conversation, and that he can really swim with all these sharks here.
Yeah, because y'all guys be deep. I gotta be pulling out. I got all types of stuff. I come prepared. I got my whole screen right here for stuff to talk about.
All right, but this has been the Image Profile Report. We thank each and every one of you for coming and being a part of us in this hour, and we look forward to you next week at 1 o'clock. Thanks
God
again.
bless
God bless
everybody.
everyone. All right.
God bless. Take care.
Take care, guys. All right. Larry. Oh, Larry left me. Okay, good. Where am I?